Hi, everyone. Hello, welcome back. For everyone who has planned on coming back, or maybe if I start talking in the microphone, it'll give the indication that we're starting again. And then people will be like, oh, wow, it was so fun before. I want to join again. Nobody's actually coming to, they're not falling for that. Anyway, so our first talk after the break is we unfortunately, just conferences. Sometimes you have you have to merge some papers, you have some conflicts. So our first talk after the break is a soft merge, round optimal OT, merged with, oh my gosh, sorry, crypto complexity implications of TWFs. So if you guys would like to come to the stage.
Hello. Right. Hello. We're going to be talking about round optimal OT, which is a soft merge with crypto complexity implications of TWFs. Now, we all know what obvious transfer is. Alice has a pair of messages, M0 and M1, or as written here, M1 and M2. Bob has the secret bit B. Bob wants to make sure that Alice doesn't learn B. Alice wants to make sure that Bob learns both M1 and M2. Obvious transfer. It's a building block in many, many cryptographic protocols. Now, the naive construction for this is 3 rounds. Alice sends M1 to Bob. Bob thinks about whether or not to send B, but ultimately decides against it and sends a random bit B prime instead. And then Alice finally sends M2. So this is a 3-round protocol. Existing prior work shows that there's a lower bound that the number of rounds must be non-negative. And we actually are able to raise that lower bound and show that it must be strictly positive. You see our paper for details. What we're going to be talking about in this talk is the matching upper bound. We give a construction of obvious transfer in 1 round. Now, how do we build this? We thought about building this from one-way functions, 1 round, 1 way. From the names alone, it seems like it should work. This turned out to be too hard. So instead, we need a more powerful primitive, namely a 2-way function. And this we were able to successfully build obvious transfer from. Now, what is a 2-way function? We all know 1-way functions are easy to compute in one direction and hard to compute in the other. A 2-way function is easy to compute in one direction and also easy to compute in the other. And with 2-way functions, we can build obvious transfer as follows. Bob no longer needs to send a random bit to Alice. Instead, Alice can send f of M1 and f of M2, where f is a 2-way function. And using the properties of 2-way functions, Bob can compute the inverse to recover M1 and M2. We've now gotten obvious transfer in a single round of communication.
So how do we actually build 2-way functions? So note that 2-way functions, as a cryptographic primitive, we know we can't build them information theoretically. And we actually don't know how to build any crypto at all, so we need to make some assumptions. But we can give a candidate 2-way function. Let G be a generator for some group. Our candidate 2-way function is f of x equals G to the x. We can prove that this is secure from a simple variant of the discrete log assumption, which we call the indiscrete log assumption. The indiscrete log assumption states that given a group element G and G to the x, it is easy to find x. Okay, so what can we actually do with 2-way functions? We know that we can build obvious transfer with 2-way functions, but it turns out that we can actually do a lot more. Something obvious that might seem clear to you is that you can actually build single-party computation from obvious transfer. But it turns out that we can actually also build trapdoor 2-way functions, which Matteo will talk about later, and from trapdoor 2-way functions, 0-way functions. 0-way functions turn out to be actually very useful in constructing zero ignorance proofs. We can also build public key decryption from 2-way functions, as well as public information retrieval. Now, we can saw from the previous talk that obfuscation is really important. It turns out that for public information retrieval, we can actually build distinguishability obfuscation. So 2-way functions can build a whole bunch of stuff. One-way functions can also build a whole bunch of stuff. We called that mini crypt. This is better, so we're going to call it mega crypt. And now Matteo will talk about some of these constructions.
Yes, let me tell you about some of the coolest construction in our paper. So first of all, we claim that from obvious transfer, we can build one-party computation or single-party computation. Well, how do we do this? In single-party computation, one party is trying to do some computation. Well, then what they can do is to do obvious transfer in their head. We show in our paper that this leads to efficient one-party computation. Another cool result that I want to highlight in this short presentation is the trapdoor two-way functions. Well, we know from before that two-way functions are easy to compute, both in one way and in the other way. But what if with a trapdoor, we could make them hard to compute both ways again? So to achieve this, we decided to use a trapdoor that, unlike normally when it's the size of the security perimeter, it's super exponential in the security perimeter. In this way, anybody who wants to evaluate our trapdoor two-way functions will be stuck in reading the trapdoor forever. The existence of these trapdoor two-way functions also imply the existence of no-way functions. How do we build no-way functions from trapdoor two-way functions? Well, we just publish the trapdoor inside the description of the function itself. This way, any Turing machines that wants to try to compute the no-way function will also be stuck forever just reading the trapdoor.
We're going to conclude on some open questions. So the first open question, we all know how to build one-way functions from before. In this talk, we discovered two-way functions and showed what we can do with them. So I'll leave it as an open question to you all. What about three-way functions? And we'll finish by thinking a little bit about the question that I'm sure is on all of your minds. Is this quantum? It turns out that indiscrete log assumption is probably broken by Shor's algorithm. I don't know. So we'll ask the question, can we actually build two-way functions from teaching with errors? Or is that just this talk?
All right. Yeah, okay. Why am I after a funny talk? That's not fair. Yeah, let me try to put this on. All right. Yeah, this is a little bit better. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Latin Crypt 2025. So Latin Crypt 2025. Oh my goodness. Oh no, yeah, I wrote this myself. Yeah, no, because let me tell you about the conference. So we have several associated events. Castillo Crypt is a two-day crypto school that we usually do in Spanish. It has the name of an indigenous population of the region. Last time it was Inca Crypt, this time it's Castillo Crypt. AS Crypto is a two-day advanced school now in English, and then Latin Crypt is a three-day event. Now, the approximate dates, this is because after the slides, we were like, okay, we may need to revisit this, so I'm not giving you concrete dates. So it will be in spring 2020, between summer and fall 2025, so after July next year. And the submission deadline will be something around spring 2025. So in the team, we have as general chair, Daniel Cabarcas, who is my advisor from my undergrad and master's. I am the program co-chair together with Ivan Dangard. And then we have as school chairs, Arancha Zapico, Javier Berbel, Hernan Vanegas, and Octavio Perez, all Latin Americans who are very committed to this conference and all the associated events. What do we want to reach with this conference? We want to get a very strong and engaging program committee. And partly because of this, I hope we can also get a very strong and valuable paper submissions from all of you. So who is going to submit to Latin Crypt next year? That was an inverse question, so an inverse answer. All right. So a valuable opportunity to engage with the local community. And also it would be great to contribute in balancing out the power dynamics in our field, which is no surprise. The idea is to support less represented regions, enable new opportunities, and learn about other researchers in other parts of the world and potentially acquire new talent, such as many of us who come from underrepresented regions and are here today thanks to these type of opportunities. So where is it going to happen? It's going to happen in Medellin, which is one of the biggest cities in Colombia. It's the second biggest one. It has a vibrant and cultural scene, plenty of tourist attractions, plenty of infrastructure for international visitors. It has great food, cultural experiences, salsa, well, and different other Latin stereotypes you can imagine. Then it has easy access to several other experiences across the region. In Colombia, you have deserts, you have mountains, you have jungles, you have all tons of different things you can explore if you're interested in that. It's also very well connected. There are many direct flights to Medellin alone. Bogota, which is only 45 minutes by plane from Medellin, has even more. It has one to Istanbul even, which is like 14 hours. So many of you will definitely be able to attend. I mean, to commute conveniently. The venue is a private university. It's called EAFIT. It's in a very good location. It's going to be close to a lot of popular touristic and local areas with a lot of English speaking around because it's quite popular. And well, it's going to be a very refreshing experience. You're going to be able to interact with the local community and so on. There are plenty of excursions we have in mind. These are just some examples, putting some pictures, but I think it will be a very exciting experience for many of you. But I want to emphasize that I really want to invite you to attend, not for the tourism, but is to engage with the local community and help us become bigger and stronger and more present in this type of conferences. So it can also be valuable to you. You can learn about how different people do different things in other sides of the world, interact with local researchers. And if you have more submissions, we have hopefully better quality, and then we have better venues, more venues for publications as a field. So this could be a good opportunity to addressing the problem of having 55 tracks in crypto in 5 years from now. And who knows, it may end up being more accessible to you as well. It's a not so expensive country. Visa-wise, it's not that restrictive, so it may also help you. All right, and with this, I want to say thank you for your attention.
Oh, yeah, that's useful. What is this? What's the word? Huh? Or not? This one, no? Oh, this one. Yes. Okay, hi, good evening. So I'm going to talk to you about a zoo, and I'm not going to talk about any kind of zoo. I'm going to talk about not animals, but actually beasts. And you know this because you are the creators of all of these beasts that I'm going to talk about. So this is a Stsu, and STAP stands for Symmetric Techniques for Advanced Protocols. So this means algorithms that have been designed specifically to be efficient in the typical suspects. So these are zero knowledge, FHE, and MPC. And the Stsu is nothing but a website. It's a website that collects proposed STAP symmetric primitives. So then again, like your creatures and your stuff. And what we do is we list all of them that we know about, and we collect information that is cryptographically relevant to us, right? So we have some general info, maybe like the year it was published, where the authors and so on. We have basic cryptographic properties such as the round function or the parameter sets or the description in general, some weaknesses like what has been attacked so far, what not, and like what the subsequent papers have been done, and implementation details. And finally, of course, miscellaneous. If there is any primitive that is special for whatever reason, then we say that it's special for whatever reason. So this is the list so far, or this is a screenshot I took last week. It's actually longer now, but like there's a bunch of primitives, and we need your help because again, these primitives are yours, or the cryptanalysis papers are yours. So it would be great if you could take a look at the website and let us know if we should change something, add something, the list of primitives is also not complete. So this is just good for the community. It makes us all be good and friends and whatever. And also it's nice that we don't have to read a whole paper, but we can just like look at the main properties of something just by looking at a website. And speaking of zoos and animals, polar bears, I think you're already tired of hearing about Arctic Crypt, or maybe not, but Arctic Crypt next year, July 6th to 11th of, July next year in Svalbard in the north of Norway. So you can basically come here, and then afterwards, if you are like very fed up of the cold, you can go to Latin Crypt to Colombia. So like, that's great. Submission deadline is September 13th. So if you have a paper that is about to be finished, please finish it and submit. Notification will be October 23rd, and registration opens the 1st of November, a little bit earlier for the accepted papers because we don't have that many slots, and we want to make sure that the accepted papers are actually there. Also, really important, students, please come. I have fought very, very hard to give you a discount in the price for registration. So please join us in the north. And that's it. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diego Aranha. I was born in Brazil. Nowadays, I live in Denmark. I'm professor at Aarhus University, but my passport is still WIC. So this story starts in October 23, where after the chess conference, I was in Prague, where we had a lot of fun. We worked a lot. I was part of the organization, so we were kind of tired a few weeks after the conference. But as soon as that passed, we started preparing for Chess 24, right? Is in Halifax, Canada. Let's go. Then the problem is, why go to Canada, right? One might think, why would I even go to Canada? Features of Canada. First is stability. It's a very stable country. For a Brazilian, that's very important. Canadians are known to be very polite, right? They apologize profusely. So that's very important for a Brazilian as well. If you fear adventurers, you can also get frostbite and maybe lose a finger or two. If you watch Game of Thrones, a lot of people on that show had frostbite, by the way. And as you know, Canada is a multicultural country, right? It's friendly to immigrants. So it's great to join a conference there because it shouldn't be too hard to get into the country. That's what you might have heard. So then I thought, okay, let's go to Canada for Chess 24, Halifax. How can I get a visa to get there? So let's go to the website and figure out how long it would take to get a visa. Oops, 400 days. I was already late. So that's not a good solution. And then you might wonder, like, why is it like that? If Canada is a multicultural country, why is it so restricted in terms of, visa restrictions and so on? So this is the map for you can find on Wikipedia for the policy, the visa policy map. So the green countries there are the ones that, of course, can go to Canada without a visa. And you can see that, Europe and the US and not much else. And then you can think of like this map might look similar, might be quite similar to another visa policy map, and might be even influenced by that. Oh, wow, surprise. Actually, they might be the same picture. So I needed an alternative solution. There is something called an electronic travel authorization that works like this. For a few countries, if you have a US visa, you can actually apply online for a Canadian visa. That should be much faster. So then you reduce the problem of getting a Canadian visa to the problem of getting a US visa. So the problem is that a US visa is not easy to get, right? You might need a very strong reason to go to the US. And it's not, especially for Brazilians, it's not just like, I want to attend the conference. In many cases, you need to have a paper accepted at the conference. You might even have to present the paper during the interview, the visa interview. So then we had the paper lying around. Yes, we're flexing right now. So Marius and Sebastian will present it tomorrow morning. And then we decided, okay, let's submit it to Crypto. So it turns out that the paper was accepted. And this is the first case that someone needed a paper at Crypto to attend chess. So our results are, in terms of latency, we reduced the time to get a visa from 400 days to just 10 days. So a speed up of 40 times. And under this US visa assumption, we got the Canadian visa in just 5 minutes, right? This is a speed up of 115,000. Of course, this is not just a funny story about myself. The message I want to leave to you is think of the children, in this case, the future researchers in our community. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Radhika, and I'm just here to give you a short teaser. Um, this one, right? Okay. Yep. Okay, so I'm just here to give you a short teaser about our ongoing work, Smog, where Smog takes inspiration from a fellow wyvern, the LLVM dragon, and this time comes around to help the hobbits. So before explaining what Smog is and what it does, let's ask a question. How do we write code for NPC applications? So if you are like Gandalf, who knows everything, you will probably just pick one of these libraries and write the most optimal code for your application. But most of us are not like Gandalf. We are like the dwarves. So dwarves know a little bit or a lot about a specific application or some specific MPC protocol or something like that. And so we try to find something which is closest to what we know and work with some existing DSLs or libraries or compilers, whatever, like Obliv-C or something like that. And we try to achieve the most optimal performance we can with like minimal effort. But there are a lot of people who are like the hobbits, and there's nothing for them. So what do? They can't write code for MPC. So Smog comes here, helps. Yeah. So with the help of LSVM, Smog comes and allows them to write programs in C, C++, or any other LLVM based language. So basically, you just write code like you would for uh, general purpose computing and tell what is private and what's not private. And Smog will compile it for you, add multi-party computation to it, and also let the parts which are supposed to be public to be public. So, so it helps with interoperability, wherein you want a lot of legacy programs to have just a small part to be secure computation. You can use Smog because it's not really an independent compiler. It's just LLVM plus some transformation modules. So yeah. Also, it helps the dwarves because the performance is comparable to the DSLs and compilers. So why waste your time using, I don't know, putting some effort in using those DSLs? Just write your code like you would for clear text computation. Okay, so let me give you a brief overview of how you would use it. So here I have a program which is just biometric and I have changed nothing. It's just same as what you would for clear text. And you can see the first and second parameters are A and B, which is like the array of points and the point. So those are supposed to be private, but right now I don't do anything. Just use clang to emit the LLVM. Then I pass the config, which specifies that the first two parameters are private and the next are public, to Smog with the LLVM IR. So Smog first transforms the program into oblivious, optimizes the program, uses existing LLVM optimizations, and also optimizations that we actually need for MPC, but are not really necessary for general purpose computing. So, and now we can just use the LLVM backend to get an object file, and you can actually hook it up with any MPC library that you want. And that's it. The paper is not public yet. It'll be public soon, and I look forward to a lot of your feedback, hopefully no bug reports. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. So thank you. A few days ago, I was asked by a researcher to please present on what we believe to be an under-investigated problem in the cryptographic community, namely the DDH problem. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, DDH stands for double dactylic humor. Now, the double dactyl is a humorous verse form first defined by Hecht and Pascal in 51. It has a strict structure with multiple lines consisting of 6 syllables, a nonsense preamble. I've personally been studying this form for about 20 years now, and it is a surprisingly hard problem. A better definition was provided in an undated paper by Robinson as long, short, short, long, short, short, dactyls in diameter, verse form with choriamp, masculine rhyme, 1 sentence, 2 stanzas, hexasyllabically, challenges poets who don't have the time. Now, I'm sure, like the rest of you, the moment you encounter a hard problem, your first thought is, how can I use this for cryptography? Well, we started worrying about quantum computers, so I created a submission. Higgledy-piggledy, quantum-safe crypto schemes keeping us safe from an uncertain threat. NIST is a contest to seek out the best of them. Post-quantum RSA is my top bet. Fortunately, later rounds let me update my draft. Higgledy-piggledy, lattice cryptography, post-quantum system that's commonly used. Try as I might, I am learning with errors. So after each paper, I'm badly confused. That did not meet the final round. So I started investigating classical cryptography and determined that I could actually apply the DDH problem to password authentication protocols. Shibboleth, brave Hebrew warriors found out their foes through some tongue twister games etymologically from these occurrences, traits that identify have earned their names. So with a strong theoretical case for the applicability of this is clearly appropriate for this conference. But I asked myself, is it actually useful in the real world? And in 2020, the NSA announced a major cryptographic flaw in Microsoft certificate validation. And a lot of ink was spilled explaining exactly how you might exploit this. Lots of effort would have been saved if they had only used my summary. Higgledy-piggledy evil parameters extract the point from a well-trusted key. For your new root CA, let X be simply 1, explicitly set the victim as G. That is literally all you need for that attack. So we have the DDH problem. And of course, there are related problems. There's CDH, or couplet doggerel humor. There's LWE, which is limericks with entertainment, and what I believe to be probably the hardest of all, the RSA problem, or recounting sonnets amusingly. So at this point, I think it is clear we need a fourth track at Crypto dedicated to poetry and the other performing arts, or to put it differently, higgledy-piggledy, rump session audience, pick up your pens and go conquer your fear. Crypto-poetical research is needed, so I hope to see loads more poems next year. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sai Kumar Yui. I'm going to be talking about my work with Rishabh Goyal. It's on multi-authority functional encryption from simpler assumptions. So let me recall the notion of functional encryption. So functional encryption is this powerful generalization of public key encryption in which an encryptor can encrypt a function F, and a decryptor that is in possession of a secret key for attribute X can use the ciphertext and the secret key to learn f of X. So a generalization of functional encryption is multi-authority functional encryption, which contains multiple authorities instead of a single key authority as in the previous version. So multi-authority functional encryption systems were initially proposed in the context of attribute-based encryption by Luco, Waters, and Chase. And it was later generalized to multi-authority functional encryption by Brakeski et al. So in a MAFE scheme, there are n independent and non-interacting authorities which issue secret keys for the attribute space that they control. So the authorities can be an SSN, the Social Security Administration, which controls the SSN attribute, the DMV that controls the driving license attribute. It could be a bank or anything. So an encryptor in this system can use the master public keys issued by these authorities and the partial secret keys for attributes x1 through xn to learn f of x1 through xn. So in order to mitigate against trivial mix and match attacks, we parameterize each user in the system with a unique identifier known as GID, where the GID could be anything like a passport number, an SSN, driving license, or any unique identifier. So what do we know about MAFE? So we know that MAFE can be constructed by assuming sub-exponentially secure indistinguishability obfuscation and sub-exponentially secure inject to one-way functions, as shown by Brakeski et al. But these are two very strong assumptions. The question we are interested in is, can we build MAFE from simpler assumptions? Well, yeah, there's a spoiler. Yes, we can do it. But however, in order to build MAFE, there are certain serious barriers to overcome. And specifically, as shown by Brakeski et al., an N-authority MAFE scheme implies an indistinguishability obfuscation scheme. And this indistinguishability, this implication is tighter even in the bounded collision setting. In the bounded collision setting, the adversary declares the number of secret keys that it corrupts during the system time. So technically, you only require 2n keys from n authorities for this implication to work. However, all hope is not lost. A closer look at this implication shows us that this implication works only in a very strong corruption model. By what do we mean by a strong corruption model? Is just the authority can corrupt multiple secret keys for the same GID from any authority. So the purpose of having a GID as proposed by the MAAB literature is that an authority will issue only a single secret key to a user throughout its lifetime. The authority can issue multiple secret keys to multiple users, but for a specific GID, it will only issue one secret key throughout its lifetime. I mean, this strong corruption model makes sense if you have fully corrupted authorities or authority that goes rogue. I mean, but in real life, it would be very strange when a DMV starts issuing multiple driving licenses to a single user. So in our work, we consider some natural corruption model in which, just like the MAAB literature, a single user will only get one key per authority. So just to reiterate, the authority can issue multiple secret keys to multiple users, but for a specific GID, you only get one secret key throughout the lifetime. So in order to simplify this framework further, if in a secret key corruption model where Alice gets a secret key for attribute X, Bob gets a secret key for attribute Y, Charlie gets a secret key for attribute X from the same authority, this is good. It's only when Alice gets two secret keys for two distinct attributes from the same authority, this is when Brakeski et al.'s implication holds. So in summary, with very strong corruptions and an authority MAFE scheme implies IO, so it might be very hard to construct this object from simpler assumptions. But what about MAFE scheme with these natural corruptions? Can we construct this from simpler assumptions? So this is the main goal of our work. And we show that, yes, we can construct this object from simpler assumptions. And we construct a constant authority MAFE scheme for general circuits from simpler assumptions such as the decisional Diffie-Hellman, not the DDH from the previous talk, but the DDH assumption and its bilinear variant. We also amplify this result and show that we construct any polynomial number of authorities by relying on sub-exponentially secure public key encryption and random oracles. We also provide a new bootstrapping compiler in which we can take k instantiations of MAFE and kind of combine them in such a way that the resultant MAFE scheme, the number of authorities is going to be a combination of all of them. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to catch me later.
Hey, so as a PhD student about to enter my final year, one of the issues that keeps me up at night is, have I mastered all the tools that I need to be an effective cryptographer? Now, I've shared my woes with the interns at NTT, and they've been very supportive. But Kabir, in particular, has mentioned a very interesting question. How high do you need to be able to count to be a cryptographer? Oh, that was the right slide. So, well, first let's start off by defining where the endpoints are. 0, probably very useful. 2 to the n, also probably very useful. Computer can have n bits in its registers, and so it can store numbers up to 2 to the n. Now, I'm sure you don't want to hear me count up to 2 to the n. They might stab me if I try and do this on stage. So we're going to have to try and bucket things. Oh, and we can't forget our honorable mention, negligible. Very important in cryptographic definitions and proofs. But so that I don't have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 2 to the n, let's see if we can bucket some things. All right, up here, I have a bucket with some holes in the lid, and I've got a shape that corresponds to the number 1. This is an interactive talk. I'd like you to shout out which hole this square cube goes into. There we go. Very nice. All right. What about other numbers? Let's try 2. 2 looks pretty similar to 1. It's a little different. Where does it go? Well, you guys already know the answers. Exactly. It goes there. All right. How about something a little more funky? The time to brute force AES. That's a very funky shape up there. Where's that go? Yeah, you already figured it out. It's the constant. All right. Well, using the same trick, we can treat polynomials and collapse it down to one thing. Okay, perfect. Well, on the screen, we've got 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. 6 things. I think I can remember 6 things. But let's see if we can do better. I want to remember a little bit less than that. All right, well. Hit the wrong button. Sorry. Now we're going to try and remove one. Let's have a show of hands. Who here thinks in super polynomial time? All right. All of you with your hands up, come see me after the talk. I have a business proposal for you. And for the rest of you, well, you can't distinguish between 0 and negligible anyway. So let's just get rid of it. Okay. Now we're down to a few fewer. Let's see if we can reduce it a little bit more. Well, we can write 2 to the n as poly to the poly. We can write our constants as poly divided by poly. But what do we do for 0? Poly minus poly doesn't work because what if the polys aren't exactly the same? But we do have a trick from earlier. Remember that 0 equals negligible. None of you could figure that out. You can't distinguish that. You're all running in polynomial time. And negligible, we can write as poly divided by poly to the poly. All right, now I only have to remember one thing, and I'm pretty certain I can do that. And I'd like to leave off with a last quote from my friend Kabir. With a little bit of magic, everything is poly. Thank you very much.
Well, sorry about this. This is not going to be a funny talk. Actually, if you listen to Rump's session carefully, the guy before the last guy also didn't give a funny talk. This is because we share the same advisor. Sorry about that, Rishabh Goyal. So, okay, I'll be happy to introduce the joint work with Abdinat Shah, Rishabh Goyal, Ayusha Dev, and Sakuma Aduguri. Okay. So let us start by reviewing RAM delegation. It is just not for P, which proves that the RAM machine M accepts input X within T steps. And the prover sends both input X and proof pi to the verifier. The efficiency requirement is that the proof pi should be of size independent from both running time T and also the proof size, the input size, I'm sorry. And the verifier runs in the same time. And the soundness requirement is that it is hard for a prover to find a pair of X and pi such that M of X rejects, but the verifier accepts. And our work is basically introducing and design a new notion of RAM delegation, which we call encrypted RAM delegation. So it allows the prover to partially hide the input from the verifier. And the applications are homomorphic NISCs, multi-hop decay barks, rate-one NISCs, non-interactive, publicly verifiable delegation, a strong level-by-level context hiding for homomorphic signatures, and a rate-preserving MPC compiler from semi-malicious security to full malicious security. Okay, so let me introduce the notion of encrypted RAM delegation. So instead of proving that M of X accepts within T steps, the prover actually parses input into 2 components, X public and X private. So the prover sends only X public and proof pi to the verifier, and the verifier verifies with hash of X public and proof pi. So here, we require X private to be encoded and hidden inside proof pi. So the verifier should learn nothing about X private. except from the proof pi, except that the RAM machine accepts. And since we already encode X private inside proof pi, we relax the requirement of the efficiency, where we allow the proof size to grow polynomially with the size of X private and logarithmically with X public still. And the same for the verified swallowing time. And for soundness, we guarantee that it is hard to find a pair of X public and proof pi such that the verifier accepts, but there is actually no valid X private where the machine could accept X public and X private. And also the input hiding property, the proof pi hides X private. Verifier doesn't have any information about X private just from proof pi. And we put this scheme a bit forward, and we can actually make it more efficient under the following scenario. Okay, so consider that the prover is going to send multiple proofs under a single private input paired with just multiple public inputs. And we can actually let the prover preprocess X private and generate a reusable proof for different public inputs. So this is what we call reusable encrypted RAM delegation. Okay. So if we take a close look at our encrypted RAM delegation, the prover actually sends out X public, the encoding of X private, and a short delegated proof pi to the verifier. And the verifier actually first verifies encoding of X private, and then it verifies the hash of X public with the short delegated proof pi. So now the prover can actually start to send out multiple public inputs and the delegated proofs to the verifier. And now the efficiency is that the proof pi is of size independent from both public input and private input. And the same for the verifier's running time, except that the verifier has to verify the encoding of X private, which this step grows polynomially with the size of X private. Okay, this is a comparison of the original ERAM and the new reusable ERAM. So our results and theorems. So theorem 1, assuming either LWE, K-Link, or sub-exponentially secure DDH, there exists a reusable encrypted RAM delegation scheme. And theorem 2, under the same set of assumptions, we have fully homomorphic NISC, multi-hop decay bars with somewhere extraction property, and read-one NISC, and read-preserving compiler from any semi-maliciously secure Mr. NISC to maliciously secure Mr. NISC, and multi-hop homomorphic signatures with strong context hiding property. And no, this is not what we have. Sorry about that. We know that this result is remarkable since A is only known from dealing before. B, C, and E are only known from learning with error before our work. Okay. And thank you. That is all.
This is going to be a serious talk about a serious issue, which is the issue of scalability for IACR conferences. So you all have been hearing us talk about this issue for the several last conferences, that we have this problem of what do we do as the number of submissions and papers keeps increasing. And there are quite a few options on the table that the board has been discussing. One, of course, is having more tracks or lower acceptance rates, presenting only some fraction of the papers, or having poster sessions. But of course, none of these are perfect solutions. They all have pros and cons. For more tracks, we have the pro that we can keep our talks pretty much the same. We can present all the papers, but you'll have smaller audiences per track, and you'll have higher fees to fit into venues that can accommodate this. With lower acceptance rates, of course, we can keep conferences exactly the same. You have very high prestige for papers. The cons, of course, are many complaining authors and lots of resubmission. If we present only some of the papers, we can still keep longer talks and control expenses, but some authors maybe can't attend if they don't have the excuse of presenting a paper, and we might have differences in the perceived prestige based on how papers are chosen to present. And of course, poster sessions has the con that we don't like poster sessions. But all of these problems actually are quite difficult, and some people say this problem is hard. I say no problem. because all of these things can be solved by cryptography. So the issue with multiple tracks, of course, is that post-quantum sessions can allow us to have tracks in superposition. This will at times be a little confusing for the audience. But we can also solve the issue with only presenting some papers. You know, if we don't want that some authors don't have the excuse or we have differences in prestige, we can just obfuscate which papers were actually presented. We can also deal with lower acceptance rates by having bi-deniable decisions and letting all authors think that they were accepted. And finally, cryptographers don't like posters. I don't have a fix for that, but they do love acronyms. So we're just going to rebrand a poster as a partially oblivious simulatable technical explanatory resource. And now, wait a minute, you might say there's one problem I haven't solved. What about the goal of reducing travel? Easy. One-way conferences. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. And so now we're on to our second break before the last session. We're going to do another 10 minutes and just start at 10 o'clock. I hope you guys come back. I'm talking in the next one.